I feel like collaborating is uniting forces. It's like, hey, this is what I can do. This is what you can do. And we're kind of working in a similar way. Why not join forces? To me, it's really that.
Welcome to Style as Identity, a podcast by the Majority Group. Join us as we get to know the designers and founders who are shifting our understanding of the style status quo. We're your hosts. I'm Lola Catero.
And I'm Frankie Ikwuazom. Join us each episode as we learn from brands that are an extension of their values, identity, and aesthetic, and are super open about sharing the less talked about aspects of what they do. We're so glad you're here.
It all started with a cold DM.
And it ended in a super cute collaboration.
This is a case of real recognize real.
Two brands, one a jewelry designer and one apparel.
We're talking about fashion designer Tala Barbotin Khalidy and jewelry maker Siren.
Let's hear how they took both their crafts to create something new.
Hi, Tala.
Hello.
Hi, Tala. So great to be speaking with you. We've been waiting for this moment.
Me too. I'm excited.
So your website has a mission statement of changing the lens through which we view Lebanon and Syria. Tell us more about that and how you think about achieving that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are a lot of stereotypes when it comes to how that particular area of the world is perceived, particularly by the West. It's often considered as like a conflict-ridden area and region. And there isn't much focus on the culture, the rich crafts that exist within those areas. And our mission is to be able to bridge understanding through clothing design, using local crafts, working with artisans from the region, and to be able to communicate with the rest of the world through that.
You use the word bridge understanding. And I think that even though a lot of the people that you collaborate with, and we'll talk about that more throughout this conversation, are local, the bridging is such a natural word for collaboration as well, and that you're bringing two disparate things together. And so it is really interesting to think through how the method with which you achieve that also involves bringing two different things together. The method with which you achieve like bridging that understanding. So I love that. That's just my 2 cents from that.
Yeah, I think like it definitely reflects in different aspects of the brand and just how we work with people. So since it's kind of the core belief, it just trickles through.
So who is Tala Barbotin Khalidy for?
Excellent pronunciation. So it's for people who want to experience self-care through community and who want to wear clothes that are ethically made, but also incredibly aesthetically pleasing and have intention behind them in terms of design, intentionally designed, intentionally made, and then intentional in the way that we design clothes for people who want to expand their way of creatively expressing themselves, right? Which is why we have so many different people who are wearing clothes from the brand from all parts of the world and all kinds of demographics, really, and genders as well.
What I love about that is this term self-care has come into the mainstream vernacular over the past few years, and it's really been commoditized as a concept. And you're taking it back to, we need to wear clothes every day, and that is a form of self-care. And here's a way that it can do it, as opposed to saying we need to buy more things to care for ourselves, which is backwards. So I love that framing.
And also just connecting it back to we feel cared for by community, and it's by caring for community and the people who make our clothes, even that extends to that we get to feel a sense of support within ourselves.
I read a lot about loneliness in today's world, and it feels like we're more connected than ever with so much of technology and how much access there is to anyone, regardless of proximity. But still, like, loneliness is on the rise. And I think that attachment between self-care and community is super important because naturally, an aspect of self-care is being part of a community. big or small. I think naturally we tend to, the tighter it is, the more we feel part of it. But that connection is quite strong for your brand. At least that's what's really clear to me and Lola. But taking a step back, what was your path to Tala Barbotin Khalidy? Like, how did you get here?
I wanted to be a fashion designer ever since I was 8 years old. I just decided that this was going to be my path. At first, I wanted to be an architect like my dad, and then I discovered math. And I said, no, that's not for me. Little did I know that there was a lot of math in pattern making, but oh well. I was always surrounded as a child by craft. So I grew up in Paris, but I would go back and forth to Lebanon to visit my family almost every summer. And my grandmother had a shop in Lebanon where she worked with local craftspeople. So she worked with not only people who make clothes, but also metalware, silverware, furniture. She designed herself. She did the entire creative curation of it. And I spent a lot of time in that shop as a child, just playing salesperson or smelling herbs in a corner or just causing chaos. And it kind of just went in the back of my mind as I decided to pursue a more traditional fashion education. I went to Parsons for my bachelor in fashion design, apparel design. And while I was at Parsons, I was exploring all of these alternative ways of sustainably designing clothing. And right around that time is when my grandmother passed away. So it was interesting because I started to go back to craft. And I didn't realize the connection really, but it allowed me to heal and process my grief in a way where I felt connected to my grandmother through craft, through embroidery, and through researching textiles. And so that's why my thesis collection at Parsons is basically what started the idea for the brand, right? It was on embroidery as identity, embroidery as a meditative tool. And I really started to research ways that I could work with people back home. And a lot of the time, actually, the artisans that we work with are either the same people that my grandmother used to work with, or their children, their grandchildren, or just through word of mouth, people that they knew, and the circle expands that way, right? But really, that's how the idea for the brand was kind of fostered. And after working a couple of years in the fashion industry in design, technical design, material sourcing, I decided to launch the brand full time right after COVID. Well, during COVID, actually, when I had time to think about it.
Wow. Your path to the brand was in a lot of ways like very meditative. I'm just curious, like, have you been able to maintain that throughout this time that you've launched it? What do you do to maintain that? Because starting a business, we've spoken to so many brands that we know maintaining a brand is also like a lot of hard work. And there are aspects of it that aren't very meditative, but your path to it was. What does your practice look like to maintain that?
It's hard. I feel like as a business owner, I always talk about this, but I feel like no matter what I do within the brand, whether I'm like scrambling to do social media or marketing or plan events or design or production or all of these things, because I truly believe in what I'm doing, I just keep on coming back to that, even when I have a moment of doubt or I'm not feeling good about the path that I'm on. I just come back to, okay, like what was my intention starting this? Why did I do this in the first place? It helps support me in those moments where I'm really doubting myself. And I would honestly say as well, I have a meditation practice myself. I'm a certified meditation teacher. So I do that for my own well-being as well. And luckily, I've connected with a lot of other founders as well that I can just call and be like, hey, this is challenging. How are you dealing with this? Like, help, and we go back and forth and support each other in these moments. Otherwise, it would be impossible to do this. It's so much work.
And everything you just said, your website copy has beautiful messaging and it just echoes everything we've been talking about today. I'd love to read back to you something that you wrote. Imagine if clothes could go beyond the idea of just being worn, that they are used to pass down knowledge, culture, explore personal identity, and provide us with the tools for self-growth. Hearing you say this, and we've mentioned the word sustainability, and I don't think we often say this about ourselves, but at the Majority Group, we have a very expansive understanding or like definition for sustainability. It's not just organic cotton. And hearing what you have talked about today, for me, it really encapsulates what we consider to be sustainable. What it's made out of, who makes it, where it's made, who wears it, why they wear it, how they feel when they wear it, and how long they own it, and how long it impacts their lives. And I couldn't think of a better representation of what that means coming to life through a brand.
Wow, that's so nice. I really appreciate that because I also believe, sustainability can often be thought of in like a very practical way, right? Like the different aspects of the supply chain and just kind of like matching that in little graphs and like loops. And when you consider it more as a philosophy, it becomes more integrated within the things that you're actually making.
Oh, we don't just buy sustainability, it's a way of life, a philosophy.
Yeah, I love that, what you just said, for a lot of reasons. But like sustainability and sustainable living existed before we also introduced all these new things into like how we operate, how we make things, how we live life. So it's like, to your point, like applying it in that really foundational, just philosophical way, in a way, like it's making sure we're not thinking about sustainability in a reverse way through what we already know, but rather through like what we need just naturally. So I really like that.
So much of our world and the culture of the US and beyond is about the antithesis of sustainability. We used to have like light bulbs that never went out. And then the light bulb companies were like, oh, shoot, we're not making any more money. And then started making ones that went out. And so the longevity of the things that we have is sustainability. And yeah, our society works really hard to try to weed that out and then sell it back to us.
It's something I could honestly talk about for hours, so I won't for this particularly. But I will say that through cultural traditions, honestly, sustainability is embedded at the center of so many traditions where you make an item of clothing, you wear it, you mend it, you wear it to death, and then you reuse it as like a quilt, or like you go and use it even as a rag, or you pass it down to your children. Or and I think definitely in consumerist culture there was a shift. I think it was particularly around the highs of advertising in like the 50s or so, where you could actually see the shift happen, where advertising agencies started to sell clothing no longer as an investment but as a disposable thing, right? Before it was kind of just sold to us the way that a car would be sold or an item of furniture. And then there was a shift. Even a house, it was definitely an investment to be made. And then companies were like, oh, hey, like we could get more money by just, making it disposable. And then there are like ads comparing it to cigarettes, to chewing gum, to like all these things that are disposable and can be thrown away.
Absolutely. Sustainability is preserving culture. Okay, we've talked a lot about changing our relationship with clothes. And for a brand like yours, it's barely 3 years old, but you have at least 5 collabs under your belt with jewelry makers, illustrators, animators, rappers. So how do you define collab, and how does it further this mind shift?
I feel like collaborating is uniting forces. It's like, hey, this is what I can do. This is what you can do. We're kind of working in a similar way. Why not join forces? To me, it's really that, beyond like the traditional aspects of business collaboration. It's like, how can we use our respective talents and create something meaningful?
That makes sense. How do we do this together? I'm curious, based on that principle of just and that definition, like how does that then inform like how you actually work together? Like, do you have a similar like process for each one, or do you kind of figure it out as you go? Like, how does that definition trickle down into like the process of collaborating?
Right. It's very different according to whom I'm working with.
Because we're thinking too, like across like jewelry makers, illustrators, animators, rappers, like at the end of the day, we're all creators, but they are different forms of expression. When we were processing that, we were like, the fact that you're able to approach another creative mind and think like, how can we make something together? Like we were trying to work our way backwards, and we're like, can that look the same if you're just coming with the same mindset each time? Or is part of that making something together? Is there an aspect of like feeling around and seeing what works? What does that look like for you?
I feel like of those collaborations, some of them were kind of stemmed from me trying to problem solve something that came up with the brand. So, for instance, with Rama, who's an animator, a Syrian illustrator, and she does animations as well, the problem that kind of came up was I work with a lot of artisans who don't want their photo taken or their image kind of represented on the internet in that way. And I was thinking, as a sustainable brand and as someone who works in ethical fashion, there's this idea of transparency. People want to see who is making the clothes. And at the same time, it doesn't feel valid to go against people's wishes just to satisfy a need for transparency, and feels unethical almost. So I contacted Rama to make animations that kind of captured the context in which the artisans live, how they work, what kind of music they listen to. So we created these small animations together about different artisans that we work with. And that was my way to kind of represent the storytelling of all of that without actually putting together like a photo or an image in a direct way. So that's one aspect of collaborating. And then with musicians and rappers, oftentimes, it'll be like, I love their music or they like my work. And we reach out to each other and we say, hey, like, how can we actually get to collaborate? And sometimes it takes like years for anything to kind of come up, where they're like, oh, like Nuria was like, hey, I have this opportunity and all of these concerts coming up. Do you want to do something together? I can make a little video on YouTube exploring different sounds from like the Swana region, but wearing your clothes, and then that kind of happens as well. Or with Nouri, who's another illustrator who's Lebanese, we just kind of got to know each other first and then said, hey, like maybe I can take some photos of you wearing the clothes. And then if you want, you can illustrate them and kind of play with them. And so that was way more playful and just a way for us to kind of engage our creative senses. So really, it's very different in the way that it all comes together.
But it's always rooted in respect. Either you're trying to honor the artisans you work with and your relationship with them and them as humans. So you find a way to also bring transparency to your business. But then for musicians and rappers, like those collabs, you're loving on each other, you have this respect, and you're like, how do we continue to like figure this out and collab together and have some fun?
Yeah, absolutely.
And curiosity too, rooted in respect and curiosity. Like even just that you said, sometimes it takes years to figure out what we're trying to make, but just willing to kind of follow that alongside each other is really cool.
A lot of these people are also, I didn't know them before. It's not like, oh, they were in my immediate circle. Well, Feluca kind of was, but the rest of them, it's really just me reaching out or them reaching out and saying, hey, I love what you're doing. Let's create something.
Yeah, we've listed a few. So like after all of these collaborations that you've done, like we hate to limit it to one thing. What is one thing that you've learned that you really take with you? And it could be to other collabs. It could also just be like in life. But yeah, what's something you've learned that you wouldn't have learned otherwise?
I think inspiration. It's very common when you're just doing your own thing, you're focused on your path to kind of forget about how exciting it is. And working with other people in collaborations kind of brings that refreshed state of mind. It just gets you excited about the possibilities again.
I do know, like this conversation.
Ultimate collaboration right here.
Yeah. It reminds me when I've been like inside all day and my head's down, and then I go out for a walk and I'm like, oh shoot, I needed that. Don't even realize the world I've created for myself isn't really serving me and I need to get out of it.
Right. It's kind of like this sort of cabin fever. And then you see other people and creatives doing their thing. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is why I'm doing this. And actually, it is kind of fun. Let me then go back to my house and sketch all day or something. Like
100%. Let's dig into your collab with Siren. What was your like collaboration origin story there?
So with Siren, I think I reached out to her directly just in an Instagram DM and said, hey, let's collaborate on a jewelry collab. And she just went for it. She said, yeah, absolutely. We had a phone call and then exchanged emails back and forth to decide what that looked like. You know, we were aware of each other's work, but we just kind of dove in.
You said you reached out. So I'm curious if you were aware of each other's work. We'd love to know, like, why that moment? What was kind of that click in your mind to be like, I'm going to reach out to Sayron? And then also, like, why did you want to collab?
I think a collaboration happened when I was a year into the brand, really. I remember at that time feeling really challenged by pushing through the growth of the brand. And at the same time, I was seeing Siren doing such beautiful jewelry, like really making things that were really unique and special. Like if you see her work, it's super eccentric, but it's wearable. And she had such success with it as well. She had such a good community of people and creatives, non-creatives following her, buying her things consistently, that I was really inspired by it. And I think I reached out because I aspired to be like her in my own field in a sense. So it just pushed me to kind of go out there and say, hey, let's do it.
It's a great idea.
Yes, Siron's jewelry is gorgeous. Can confirm.
And I mean, it's always hard building an audience base and community, but especially those early days of a brand, really wonderful for you to be like, she's doing it. Let's do something together. I admire you, and to help build your brand with things that make sense.
And props to her as well, you know, because I was a very young brand. I had like 1,500 followers, 1,000 followers. I can't even remember. And she just really went for it, you know, and I think with a lot of these creators and brands that I've collaborated with, when they had a platform, they use it to like uplift others. And that's something that I try to do in return as well.
Tactically speaking, when you had that first phone call, were you like already like, hey, she's going to do the jewelry, I'm going to do the pouches, that makes sense? Or were you like, what should we do? How did you arrive at the end kind of product that you sold?
Well, I was thinking of what she could offer and what I could offer. So we did spend a little bit of time trying to think it through. And ultimately, she's, you know, a jewelry brand. I wanted to make jewelry. The thought of that really excited me. And we decided that we would create the pieces together in terms of design. So she would, you know, give me the options that were available in terms of like materials and then tell me what she was thinking would be nice. And then I would reply back and be like, okay, like, yes, that makes sense. And no, those earrings are too big. Like when it came to the pouches, yeah, that was something in that initial call that we did discuss is, okay, like from a fabric standpoint, what can I bring in, you know? And my mind just immediately went to that, like, oh, how great to have like a little silky bag to put your jewelry in. It's so natural, you know? So we just went towards that from the get-go.
It sounds truly like a true collaboration. Like even when you said we were thinking through what we could each could offer, you both were part of that process though, of like, I can offer this, Siron can offer this, but like she gave you a sense of like, here's what I'm thinking. Like you wanted to make jewelry and be involved in that. So it sounds like you were both like equally kind of responsible, but how did you determine when you were maybe not necessarily like in the same room or on the same call, how did you determine who was responsible for what? Kind of what you did when you walked away before you synced again, I would say.
Yeah, so it was mostly over email. She would send me sketches of things and I would send sketches back and options of fabrics, and she would send me materials, and it was just a long email thread. And that's also where we discussed terms. Terms weren't necessarily discussed in that first original call. We just kind of refined it through the email where, you know, we were like, okay, like these are the things that make sense for a collaboration.
This was your first collab with the brand. Was it Siron's? How did that inform how the terms came to life?
It was my first collab with the brand. We did agree that it would need to be a fair split and kind of split down the middle in terms of revenue. But when it came to promotional material. That's something that I was also in charge of. I was taking pictures of the jewelry at the beach, and she was taking photos of all the little items of jewelry together, like stacks of earrings. We did agree that it would be smarter to use her website and her audience, which was much bigger and already used to jewelry as a product.
So then that also kind of maybe made it a little bit easier where you could ship the pouches. And since the jewelry and everything was already in her zone, then people placed orders and she could easily ship that out, as opposed to saying both websites, there's an added benefit to having it on both, but then it's also like a little bit more from that manufacturing and supply chain perspective. It kind of doubles that work a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, I just sent all of the pouches that I made to her. She took care of most of the shipping. It just made more sense this way. But then we did promote equally on social media, and we didn't agree on any number of posts or anything. We just really pushed the collaboration forward, and it sold out in 2 days. It was crazy.
Nice. And then one quick tactical question, because I know a lot of our listeners are interested in this. So both of you had different input costs. Were you just like, hey, I'll handle the cost for this and she'll handle the cost for that? Or did you kind of come together and say, here's our total cost to bring this to life, and you split that? How did that go down?
We handled the costs separately. The pricing of the earrings was very much done so with like materials in mind. We did talk about what, the silk pouches include and how they were made and what the sewing costs and what the fabric costs. And she talked about what her materials cost as well and the assembly of them. And we kind of put that together in the pricing.
Yeah, really interesting. I don't know if I'm the only one that's curious about this part, but did you sign an actual contract, or did you just have this understood email thread that you could kind of go back to for a paper trail?
Understood email thread. We did not sign any contracts. Again, I was very new to being a founder as well. And I did somehow, trust Siren in this process. So we did have that email thread with all of the terms laid out, but no actual contract.
Moving forward now, if another thing comes up where you find another brand that you kind of cold DM, you think you're into, would you kind of continue this path again that worked out positively last time? Or would you err more like, we should do a contract?
This time around, I would do a contract just because I've had collaborations with brands where we were almost through to the finish line. And because there was no signed contract, one person pulled out. Or I think it's really important to have a contract, definitely.
It is cool to see how, like, for that initial one, we were talking about respect and curiosity being such apparent parts of the way in which you collaborate with both the other brands or business owners or the artisans, but like trust is also clearly another ingredient to that recipe, even if like you do recommend a contract, which is totally fair. Everyone wants to be able to sleep at night, but it's cool to see how that still worked out for that first go around because the trust was just there.
I think it really depends on the size of the brands or like the people that you're working with and what they have as core values of their businesses. So I did have trust in Siren that everything would go smoothly and there would be no issues. I think when it comes to collaborating with companies that are 6 times your size, 8 times your size, and have way more resources and legal departments and all of these things, then that's when I would say, okay, be a little smart, have a contract ready, negotiate the terms, like all of these things. When it comes to collaborating with creatives and especially with single one-woman show brands, then it comes a little bit more naturally to not have a contract and just trust the process.
Yeah, hearing you say that, it's like balancing. You want to think through making sure like you're set up for success as a brand because you're putting resources into this and you're kind of taking that initial trust risk of just like jumping and hoping it works out. So it's like for the bigger brands, like that's something where you kind of want to protect yourself as a brand. Whereas for another individual, you kind of want to protect the creativity and the sanctity of the creative process. In situations like that, I could see a contract kind of making things more stiff, whereas you want to kind of start off the relationship in a way that's just like a bit more balanced. So that's cool. I'm just reflecting on that.
Totally. I think it's like, it's kind of clear if the vibes are there. And then sometimes they're not, but we're so excited about the opportunity or something that we ignore that some of the potential flags. So anything next for collabs?
Ooh, I definitely want to do more collabs for 2024. And there might be a couple in the works, but
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
but you'll have to wait and see. No, but I will say that with artists, I do have an ongoing collaboration with them, for instance. So Luca very much would dress her for upcoming shows. Nuria as well. Those are things that are kind of just going to keep on happening as the brand evolves.
Always collabing.
An ongoing collab. Yeah.
Ongoing collab.
Evergreen.
Never stop.
Love it. What a wonderful chat we've had today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that we got to talk about this. It's so important.
Damn, I love these brands.
Same. I mean, I love that they're just into getting on a podcast and having a very real conversation about what's enabled their brand to survive.
I love it. Okay, let's keep learning together. And all you out there, if it's in your journey to make a purchase today, check out some of the brands we've been talking to.
And if it's in your journey to show us some love, hit that subscribe button.
See you next time.
Bye.